Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm out for a late night walk. The air is calm. The trees are old. The stars are drinking up the tears of all the lonely people. I'm surrounded by tract homes in a subdivision, and they're pretty luxurious here. One might call them mini mansions. Because the neighborhood is old, there are many beautiful trees. Clearly, there's not a lot of concern here about trees falling, or because I see nearly no trees that have been cut down, unlike where I live. My topic tonight is delicacy. I suppose because I'm feeling delicate. And as I was walking, I was thinking, well, perhaps I'll listen to the brilliant Vedantic teacher, Sarvapriyananda. But I'm feeling too delicate for that. The sound of my own voice is softer. It's quiet here. There's no one on the street. Lots of expensive cars, and up above them, ancient stars. And since I was feeling delicate, and I recognized that, I thought I might speak a bit about the most delicate aspects inside us. The aspects that, for many of us, learn to hide from the noise and struggle and confusion of the waking world in the societies we live in, which are very strange societies and not particularly human. Though humans fill all the positions in the masquerade. Most of what is delicate within us has learned to become timid, not to show up for conflict or analysis or judgment or accounting or arguments. It's as if we're filled with animals that used to live on the surface of the earth, but over time they learn to burrow to protect themselves from the noise and the incredible shininess, the metal, the advertisements, the televisions, the computers, the smartphones, the iPads, all these things. Recently, I picked up one of my father's guitars. And instead of playing something that I knew, I immediately began composing something. And for me, that process is both ecstatic and fraught with peril. Sometimes it just doesn't work. I can't get anywhere. But this time, it was like my fingers had already mapped out this song somewhere deep inside me in my heart. And it just came out, and it's a simple, naive thing, the song. But it's beautiful, and it captures the emotion I was feeling but couldn't speak of. Couldn't bring forth. To whom indeed would I bring it forth? Such things. Who are these things for in our lives? Where are the people in our lives that the deepest, urgent silences of us ache to speak to and be heard by? So you see, we are very delicate. And most of what is good and true and brilliant and prodigious and ecstatic and free and intelligent in us, it has to hide. It doesn't feel safe. Now, in some of us, various features of these things I just cataloged have learned to be bold, and they've survived. They've survived the great undergrounding of what we refer to as growing up in, I think, an incredibly and tragically confused library of ways. And that process is filled with both mysteries and keys. I think most of us take it for granted that everybody grows out of childhood. You just grow out of it. Apparently, the size of your body determines what the expected level of, quote, maturation, unquote, is. And there is a natural process inside us of astonishing depth and profundity that we don't talk about at all. The idea that we have life phases or instars. And trust me when I say we have more than this, but we should at least be able to think this way. And those life phases are actually, they might as well be distinct beings. If we want to be tediously numeric about it, there isn't anything but a new being every instant. It's just conditioned by habits and histories. And so most of the delicate, beautiful, powerful aspects of ourselves, truly powerful, not superficially powerful, are hiding. But in some of us, they've pieces of them and constellations within them and groups of those preserved excellences survive. And some of us find some way in various parts of our lives. We may find different ways, but it's clear that some people are so madly in love with being alive that even though they feel the same burden of more and more kinds of not so much, the people in their houses with their televisions. Everyone around here has, well, not everyone. Half, 3/4 of the people here have giant trucks. These are $40,000, $60,000, $80,000 trucks. They don't have anything resembling life. The streets are dead, more dead than a graveyard. In a graveyard, you have a very astonishing array of doorways. Of course, if you're wise, every place is a graveyard. But few of us are wise. Perhaps in this unusual talk. Some of the parts of me that I keep hidden, that have been buried under stress and pain and loss and fear, anxiety, restlessness, concern, that have been buried by the noise of the waking world, the bad lighting, the terrifying colors, green and brown and blue, that are organisms. It's funny, we think, we're trained to think anyway, I don't think so, that the green of this hedge and the green of car X are the same thing. They're nothing like the same thing. Whatever color living beings are, whatever frequencies of light they thus reflect, that's not ordinary color. The color of a flower is not the same thing as if you match the color perfectly on a digital display. Delicacy. I've composed many pieces for the guitar. A lot of them are pretty folksy. Only a few songs with lyrics. But almost all of them are lost to me. I haven't touched the guitar in more than 10 years, except very briefly here and there. So the other night I sat down to try to recover a few of the songs that came into my head and started playing in my mind after I wrote, composed. I'm still composing it actually, that piece that came out of me when I picked up my father's guitar. And I was sitting in the garage because it's late on a stool and trying to recover this beautiful song that I can't believe I wrote. I can't write that now. I certainly can't write like that now. And as a writer, when I look back over my poems, the incredible, I don't even know what word to use, the incredible audacity of things I wrote 30, 20 years ago. The forms of brilliance I could not now approach. I look at these things and think, how did I write this? But the matter is more complex. When I began to recover this song, I started crying. And I had to fight to keep from just becoming, breaking down entirely. Just sobbing wildly and keening, which is a beautiful part of my crying experiences. There's a keening, just the same as crying. And I was crying because the delicate, beautiful parts of me have been so oppressed for so long that it's like they're starving. They're still alive down there, somewhere deep inside me. And I'm relatively bold. I've been lucky enough to preserve some of the intelligences of childhood. And I know we don't grow out of them. That's not what happens. And there are those in whom they cannot be inhibited. And the common people worship them. Of course, most of them become co-opted by whatever, the structure of the society we live in. But they put on mad show. And the crowds cheer wildly. Why are the crowds cheering? Because those people are embodying the delicate brilliance of our humanity in a publicly approved fashion. Right? Quarterbacking, music star, actor, actress, ballerina, cello player, therapist, body worker, writer, singer, dancer, actor. It's almost as if our societies are so stultified that in order to actually touch our humanity in its depths and our delicacy, we need a vector that is rewarded somehow by the culture at large. We need a culturally acceptable vector. Now, not everyone needs that the same way, and each creative person finds some openings in the vast mechanical electronic trap and exploits them. Yes, they exploit them. And they don't necessarily do it in a cunning way, though some of them can, some of them are capable of that. Mostly, they're like a dandelion growing right up out of the middle of the sidewalk, not in the crack. Right? They burst through and flower and, damn the torpedoes. Right? They just do the thing they're aching inside to do. Their delicacy has overwhelmed them, in the perspective that I'm presenting here. And it doesn't care about fighting or anything, but it's not going to be silenced either. Right? And its non-silence shakes the world. When the delicate features within us speak, the entire continuum of our species trembles in awe, from the beginning to the end. Because when the delicate aspects of us gain a voice, writing the song, dancing, perhaps even in meditation, in love, in play, in reverence, in wonder, in awe, in eros, then there is the semblance of being alive, something that truly captures and enacts some of the infinite potential of our natural humanity, our nature, our origin, our unimaginable depth. 1,000 jungles and every tree a possibility. This is how we are inside. It's not one thing in there, it's not 10 things. The urgencies that accompany us into our human birth, that we bring to our human incarnation as something we might call character, the loves, the things that fascinate us, enrapture us, draw forth the water of wonder from our hearts, these things. Helpless we are in the face of such things. But if only we were helpless enough that we couldn't be inhibited, as most of us tragically have. I was crying. My son was there. I was crying in so many different ways. I was crying not just for the loss of the songs, but also the felt sense that there was someone listening. I long ago discovered, and some may say, no, you merely imagined that. Let them say so. I long ago discovered that when making something of great beauty, someone transcendental comes, and sometimes more than one, and watches, and participates, and cheers, and adores, and nurtures the enthusiasm with which that which is created is created. As if only I could play beautifully enough, the muses themselves would come to listen. And sometimes I did. And I say to you that sometimes they did. But this can happen in any aspect of our lives. In fact, it may be happening to me right now. Because in speaking of these delicacies, we give them voice. And when we give them a voice, they speak. And this is the great and terrible secret of our adult humanity. Always present, waiting for a moment. In which it's safe. And sometimes that moment is when we're entirely alone, and we may feel a loneliness so perilous that we think it might destroy us. The Navajo, apparently, I do not know firsthand, are said in the Blessing Way book to have chants and prayers and an idea, or actually it's not an idea. What is it? For the moment, I will clumsily call it a tradition of seeking to do something, to become something that they call walking in beauty. Now, of course, this is the English translation of whatever the vastly more poetic and sophisticated Navajo language is or was. But I've heard and seen this written by a trustworthy source, I think, if the people he spoke with were true, and I suspect they were. They have this idea of walking in beauty. The reason I introduce this is we can make this opportunity and embody it, if we so choose. Even if we feel entirely alone. And I promise you that if you begin to walk in beauty, you will not be alone anymore. There might not be a man or woman next to you. There might not be the forest, there might not be the ocean, the sky. But they will come and walk in beauty with you and as you. And then you cannot be lonely. Then you will remember things that whole epochs of humanity have completely forgotten. The beautiful things about us, the beautiful things inside us, the delicate things that keep their silence, and prefer to infer, prefer to suggest rather than declare, prefer to invite rather than control. All of these things. Delicacy. The great and terrible seeming delicacy inside us. Most of our intelligence is there. A tiny little portion, one spark of the sun, becomes our waking mind. And in this, most of us are trapped, myself included. It's only humorous if one can see the irony. We are thirsty water. This is our problem. We are thirsty water. We cannot see the water we are carrying, the water we are, and we even cannot see the water around us. So as water, we are thirsty. It seems very dry as my watery self today. There's a good cartoon here, or maybe a comedy skit. A sort of Alan Watts comedy skit, I suppose. Most of my finest, my brightest, my most powerful, my most intelligent, my most divine aspects, they can be intimidated. They can become intimidated with there's some great word for this. The dead charade that is our culture, our nations, what we call traditions but are really habits in our case. All the accoutrement of the very object, accounting-based culture in which we live. I just walked past a truck that's probably, $60,000. It shines with terrible solidity. There's nothing as solid as that. The trees and stuff, they're not as solid as that thing. Notice how compressed it is, how solid it is. Our delicacy recoils from such things. Mine does, in any case. I won't speak for you. And yet they're, very compelling. Get inside one and drive it. Wow. It's really, it's a whole different way of being a human, to drive a car. The sky here is big, really big, compared to where I live. It's generously beautiful. It is my hope, I'm not just speaking nostalgically for the beautiful experiences of the sudden intrusion of catastrophic wonder or creativity or awe throughout my life. And those things I count to be my true life. The other stuff just seems like banking time, doing time, right? It's really like we're in a prison. We do time between the events and situations that call us into being, deeper and deeper into our true selves. We're doing time. And the television is a distraction, and the video games, and the drug addictions, and the food, and the paranoid thoughts, and the anxiety, and the sleeplessness, and all these things. They are responses to being imprisoned and isolated. While all around us there's every appearance of infinite connectivity. You have the internet. No one had the internet. Well, that's not true. Before there was television, people dreamed together, and before there was radio, humans were telepathic. It's in our nature. It's not a joke or a theory. It's a demonstrable fact. That science hasn't found it has nothing to do with the issue. 99% of the universe science hasn't found. Does that mean it doesn't exist? No, it means that within the scope of science, these things are relatively understood at the level at which our understanding can presently function. Right? There's the scope of science, and there's the scope of everything. And the fact that science hasn't proven something does not mean it's not, it doesn't exist. Science hasn't proven the minds with which we compose science. They don't know what that is. So, hopefully you see the irony there. In any case, scope. Before there was an internet, there was the hyper-connective cognitiums of all of life on Earth, including the sun, time, space, the distant stars, all of this, one nursery from which organisms and minds emerge. It's still there. It's just that the internet is really distracting, so we can't remember how to access it. As if the situation were not ironic enough, the thing that we notice we can't remember how to access it with, that thing is the access portal. That's the IP address of everything. A dear friend of mine was in a little village in South America, in the jungle. A mostly indigenous village, and the elder there the guy who was their doctor in the village, so to speak, he said to my friend, you have, back where you live, you have this internet thing. We have something older and better. You call it the jungle, but you don't know what it is. That gentleman was correct. That guy knew what time it is. He said the insects and the birds and the water and the sky, they are more than your internet. We send messages all the time. We receive messages all the time. It's always been this way with us. Well, it's always been this way with us. We're simply raised in a culture that's inveterately ignorant in all kinds of highly structured and seemingly attractive ways. These expensive houses that I'm walking through with the people inside them all asleep and their expensive cars in front of them. It's very showy. That's why people have $40,000 trucks or $50,000 trucks or $80,000 trucks. They're making the surface that recalls features of the hidden delicacies, but represents them and turns them into display phenomenon. Display behavior among humans. And this display behavior terrifies the delicacies inside us, if they are frightened. If they are not, they will use this. The same way like a CIA operative uses the situation in a poorly secured bank in some third world country to instigate an event that allows her to succeed in an operation where ordinarily it would seem to be impossible to succeed. But she does it artfully. And her life's at risk? Not a problem. Life's always at risk. Now what? There's a certain kind of boldness in some aspects of our delicacy, or that we could remember, that we could embody and enact, that bring the powers to hand. And they are things extolled in literature. Great love, adoration, daring for the sake of pure daring, but not without intelligence. I recall that this is an interesting analogy. So there was a video of a guy who was in a mall, and up on the second story of the mall there was an escalator rail. And like a 2-year-old child got a hold of that rail. And she followed it up, it dragged her up, and over, and into the free space between the floors, suddenly. Nothing she could do, she just kept grabbing it till it dropped her into space. And some guy, ordinary looking fellow, saw the whole thing take place, and he rescued the child. He caught her as she fell. And later when asked about it, everyone was, saying that he's a hero and this kind of thing. He said, no, I don't feel any of that. I just did what anyone would do. I was the one who was there. Now this kind of thing is just directly responding with the delicacy due to the situation, which is very delicate, even though it seems quite fraught and whatever. But when we decide to do something, this is why there are daredevils and things. They've discovered this. When we decide to do something truly from the heart, the whole world around us changes. The nature of who we are transforms. The things we do from our deepest, heartfelt delicacy. And sometimes it's not a gigantic thing, it's the authentic smile with which I meet someone walking around these streets in the daytime. Yes, there's something there. It's not as beautiful as a song, perhaps, or something that persists. Nonetheless, there it is, the delicacy. These poor people, they're so starved for anything resembling beauty. All of us. We poor people. That we are inclined to forget that we can become it. we can walk in beauty. We can walk as beauty in the world. Most of the time I myself forget this, but right now I'm remembering this. We can walk in beauty. And part of that is discovering and inventing what that means. Creatively, becoming superficially quiet enough that our delicacy can emerge and drink the water, the shining water of our actual nature and character, each one of us, uniquely. So many aspects we share, so many aspects can only be found in you. Only you. Right now. Only me. It's not so much that I'd like us to celebrate our delicacy, I'd like us to create situations in which we can experience and embody it together, to bring it to life. The celebration is a representative kind of thing. Right? We're doing a second order thing about something that's a first order activity. It's a bit ironic. We're going to make a representation and play that out instead of, and this is typical, right? In a way, there's something beautiful here. It's indirection. Instead of explicitly just doing it and being it, we make up a game, like Christmas or Easter, or the Super Bowl, or whatever game we make up. Us crazy, broken monkeys. So for now, let us resurrect our delicacies together. And perhaps we can learn what it means to walk in beauty together. Thank you for joining me.